The rain pounded against the emergency room windows of Boston General Hospital, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the chaos unfolding inside. It was just past midnight, and the fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across worried faces in the waiting room. Dr. Kumar had been about to end his 16-hour shift when the emergency call came in. Code Blue, Pediatric Emergency. The announcement echoed through the corridors, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his tired body. He sprinted towards the emergency entrance, his white coat flying behind him, nearly colliding with a nurse rushing in the same direction. Through the automatic doors, paramedics wheeled in a gurney carrying a small, motionless figure. A 12-year-old girl lay there, her chest barely rising with each shallow breath. Her skin had taken on a bluish tinge, and the oxygen mask fogged weakly with each struggling breath. Behind the gurney ran her mother, tears streaming down her face, clutching her daughter's school backpack like a lifeline. "She just wouldn't wake up this morning," the mother sobbed, her voice breaking. "She had a cold last week, but I couldn't take time off work. I couldn't afford to miss any shifts." Her words trailed off into quiet sobs as she watched the medical team surround her daughter. Dr. Kumar quickly assessed the situation while nurses connected monitors and started taking vital signs. The girl's temperature was dangerously high, 104.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Her oxygen saturation levels were plummeting, and the crackling sounds in her lungs told a story of severe pneumonia that had gone untreated for too long. "Get me a full blood panel, chest X-ray, and start broad-spectrum antibiotics," Dr. Kumar ordered, his voice calm but urgent. He turned to the mother, who stood trembling near the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible in the crowded room. Her waitress uniform and worn shoes spoke of long hours and hard work. "Ma'am, I'm Dr. Kumar. Can you tell me your daughter's name and if she has any allergies?" he asked gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The simple human touch seemed to ground her, and she took a shaky breath. "Her name is Maya," she whispered. "No allergies that I know of. She's always been so healthy, so strong. I should have brought her in sooner, but the urgent care costs." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. The monitors suddenly blared with warning sounds. Maya's oxygen levels had dropped even lower, and her heart rate was becoming erratic. Dr. Kumar's mind raced through treatment options. The standard protocol wasn't working fast enough. They needed to do something different, something more aggressive. He noticed Maya's hand clutching something, a well-worn library book about human anatomy. Even unconscious, she hadn't let go of it. This detail struck him deeply, reminding him of his own childhood dreams of becoming a doctor. "Listen up, everyone," Dr. Kumar announced to his team. "We're going to try something different." He explained his plan for a modified treatment protocol, one he'd recently read about in a medical journal. It was slightly unconventional, but had shown promising results in similar cases. As they worked through the night, the mother never left her spot by the wall. She alternated between silent prayers and sharing snippets about Maya, how she'd won the science fair last month, how she dreamed of becoming a doctor herself, how she tutored younger kids at the community center, even though she could have earned money babysitting instead. The next few hours would be critical. Dr. Kumar knew he should have gone home hours ago. But something about this case, about this bright young girl and her dedicated mother, made him stay. As the machines beeped steadily in the background, he settled in for a long night, determined to give Maya the chance she deserved to fulfill her dreams. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside room 204 of the emergency department, a different kind of battle was being fought. One where every breath, every heartbeat, was a small victory in the fight for Maya's life. The early morning sun began to peek through the hospital windows, but Dr. Kumar hadn't noticed the passing of time. He stood at Maya's bedside, studying the monitors with intense concentration. The experimental treatment was a gamble, one that could either save her life or, he pushed that thought away. The regular treatments weren't working, and he knew in his gut this was their best chance. Her fever isn't breaking, a nurse named Rita whispered, adjusting the IV drip. She'd stayed past her shift too, something about this case touching everyone involved. The machines hummed steadily in the background, their rhythmic beeping a constant reminder of Maya's fragile state. Maya's mother had finally dozed off in the uncomfortable hospital chair, still clutching her daughter's backpack. Her work apron was crumpled in her lap, her phone showing 3 missed calls from her supervisor. Dr. Kumar had noticed her trying to make a quiet call earlier, explaining why she couldn't make it to her morning shift. The doctor's attention snapped back to the monitors as they registered a slight change. Maya's oxygen levels had dropped again. "We need to increase the oxygen flow," he directed, moving quickly to adjust the settings. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. 20 years of medical experience, and still, cases like this made his pulse quicken. A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of Dr. Chen, the senior pediatrician. "Kumar, you've been here all night," she said, concern evident in her voice. "The board won't approve this experimental treatment protocol. It's too risky." She held up a chart, showing the standard procedures they were expected to follow. Dr. Kumar straightened his back, exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Look at her readings," he insisted, pointing to the monitor. "The standard protocol isn't enough. This girl, she's fighting so hard. We need to fight just as hard for her." He showed Dr. Chen the latest test results, explaining his modified treatment plan in detail. Maya's mother stirred, awakened by their hushed conversation. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was strength in them too. "Please," she said softly, "do whatever you need to do. Maya, she's all I have." Dr. Chen studied the charts again, then looked at Maya's still form. The girl's hand still hadn't let go of that anatomy book, even in her unconscious state. Finally, Dr. Chen nodded. "I'll support this, but you're taking full responsibility for the outcome." As if in response to their decision, Maya's monitors suddenly began blaring. Her body was going into shock, her systems struggling against the infection. The room erupted into controlled chaos as the medical team rushed to respond. "Starting new medication protocol now," Dr. Kumar announced, his voice steady despite the tension. He administered the experimental treatment while nurses worked quickly around him, each person moving with purposeful precision. Minutes stretched like hours as they waited for any sign of improvement. Dr. Kumar found himself holding his breath, watching the numbers on the monitor. Maya's mother had risen from her chair, pressing herself against the wall, her hands clasped in silent prayer. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, the numbers began to change. Maya's oxygen levels started to stabilize. Her heart rate, which had been dangerously high, began to settle into a more regular rhythm. Dr. Kumar checked and rechecked the readings, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. "The fever's breaking," Rita announced, a note of relief in her voice. She quickly replaced a warm compress on Maya's forehead with a fresh, cool one. Dr. Kumar finally allowed himself to breathe normally again. He turned to Maya's mother, whose eyes were fixed on the monitors even though she couldn't understand all the numbers. "The next few hours are still critical," he explained gently, "but she's responding to the treatment. Your daughter is incredibly strong." Maya's mother burst into fresh tears, but this time they were tears of hope. She reached for Dr. Kumar's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on her." Outside the hospital room, life continued as usual. Nurses changed shifts, other doctors made their rounds, and new patients arrived in the emergency room. But in room 204, something extraordinary was happening. A young girl was defying the odds, her will to live matching the determination of those fighting to save her. The third morning at the hospital brought the first real signs of hope. Maya's eyes fluttered open briefly, her gaze confused but alert. The simple movement sent waves of joy through the room. Her mother, who had barely left her side, burst into tears of relief, while Dr. Kumar quickly moved to check her vital signs. "Hello there, young lady," Dr. Kumar said softly, shining a small light into her eyes. "You've given us quite a scare." Maya tried to speak, but couldn't around the breathing tube. "Don't try to talk just yet," he assured her, patting her hand gently. "You're doing great." The room felt different now. The tension of the past 2 days had lifted, replaced by a cautious optimism. The monitors that had once blared warning signals now beeped steadily, their rhythm almost cheerful. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm patches on the hospital floor. Rita, the nurse who had stayed through the worst of it, was arranging fresh flowers that the hospital staff had pooled together to buy. "These should brighten up the room a bit," she said, smiling at Maya's mother, though not as much as seeing those eyes open. Maya's mother hadn't changed out of her work clothes for 3 days, but her exhausted face glowed with happiness. "I told my boss I couldn't come in," she said, straightening Maya's blanket for the 100th time. "He said not to worry about the shifts. That family comes first." Her voice caught slightly. "I didn't even know he knew I was a single mother." Dr. Kumar was examining Maya's latest test results when he noticed something poking out from under her pillow. That same anatomy book they'd found her clutching when she arrived. Gently pulling it out, he saw dozens of sticky notes marking different pages, covered in neat handwriting. "Looks like someone's been studying hard," he commented. Maya managed a weak smile and pointed at the book, then at Dr. Kumar. Her mother laughed softly. "She's been saying she wants to be a doctor since she was 6, she explained. "Every library book, every science fair project, it's all been about medicine." The moment was interrupted by Dr. Chen arriving for her rounds. Her usual serious expression broke into a smile when she saw Maya awake. "Well, well," she said, reviewing the charts. "Looks like Dr. Kumar's unconventional treatment paid off." She turned to Kumar. "The board wants to review your modified protocol. They're interested in documenting it for similar cases." Throughout the day, various hospital staff who had helped during the crisis stopped by to check on Maya. The cafeteria worker who had brought extra coffee during the long nights. The janitor who had mopped the floors with extra care, humming quiet tunes to lift spirits. Even the busy ER receptionist came up during her break, bringing a small stuffed bear from the gift shop. By evening, Maya was strong enough to have the breathing tube removed. Her first words were barely a whisper. "Thank you, doctor." Dr. Kumar, who had been updating her charts, looked up in surprise. Those 2 simple words carried the weight of all the sleepless nights, the risks taken, the prayers answered. "You did all the hard work," he replied, his professional demeanor softening. "I just helped a little." He hesitated, then pulled up a chair. "That anatomy book. What chapter were you studying before you got sick?" Maya's face lit up despite her weakness. She carefully opened the book to a marked page about the respiratory system. Dr. Kumar couldn't help but smile at the irony. "Well," he said, pulling his reading glasses from his coat pocket, "would you like me to explain how your own lungs fought this battle?" As the evening sun painted the hospital room in shades of gold, Dr. Kumar found himself doing something he hadn't done in years: teaching. Maya listened with rapt attention as he explained in simple terms what had happened to her body and how they had helped it heal. Her mother watched them both, tears shining in her eyes, seeing not just her daughter's recovery, but her dreams taking shape. Outside the hospital windows, the city was winding down for the night, but in this small room, something beautiful was beginning. A doctor remembering why he chose this path, a mother seeing her daughter's dream spark to life, and a young girl finding strength not just to heal, but to hope. Recovery looked different with each passing day. The hospital room, once filled with the urgent sounds of medical equipment, now echoed with quiet conversations and occasional laughter. Maya grew stronger, her natural curiosity returning as she peppered Dr. Kumar with endless questions about medicine during his visits. "So the antibiotics fight the bacteria like tiny soldiers," Maya asked one afternoon, sitting up in bed and scribbling notes in a small notebook her mother had brought from home. Her voice was getting stronger, though still raspy from the breathing tube. Dr. Kumar smiled, pulling out his own worn notebook from his white coat. That's a good way to think about it. Look here. He sketched a simple diagram showing how antibiotics work. His drawings weren't artistic, but Maya leaned forward eagerly, absorbing every detail. The financial reality of extended hospital stays loomed over Maya's mother. One afternoon, Dr. Kumar found her at the nurse's station, quietly crying while looking at hospital bills. Before he could speak, Rita, the nurse who had become like family, was already by her side. "We've seen your daughter's spirit," Rita said softly, sharing a meaningful look with Dr. Kumar. "There are programs that can help. Let us make some calls." Relief flooded the mother's face as they explained about medical assistance programs and payment plans. During physical therapy sessions, Maya pushed herself harder than recommended. The therapist found her practicing walking late one evening, gripping the handrail with determination. "I need to get stronger," Maya explained between breaths. "I want to help other people like Dr. Kumar helped me." The doctor himself was changing too. Other patients noticed he spent more time explaining treatments, drawing simple pictures like he did for Maya. Young patients especially benefited from his newfound patience in breaking down complex medical terms into understandable pieces. One morning, Maya's mother arrived with a surprise: Maya's science homework. "Your teacher said you can still finish the semester if you keep up," she said, pulling out textbooks. But before Maya could look discouraged, Dr. Kumar pulled up a chair. "The human body is the best science textbook," he said, turning Maya's hospital stay into an impromptu classroom. He explained how the IV drip demonstrated fluid dynamics, how the heart monitor showed wave patterns, how her own recovery illustrated cellular regeneration. Other hospital staff joined in. The respiratory therapist brought a model of lungs to demonstrate breathing exercises. The pharmacist spent her lunch break explaining how different medicines worked. Even the lab technician stopped by with slides of healthy cells to show under a portable microscope. "You're running a whole medical school in here," Dr. Chen commented one day, finding Dr. Kumar drawing the circulatory system on Maya's whiteboard. But her tone was approving, and she added her own notes about heart function before leaving. The real turning point came when Maya was strong enough to take short walks around the pediatric ward. She noticed other sick children, some scared, some lonely. Without prompting, she started sharing her new medical knowledge, explaining things in kid-friendly terms she'd learned from Dr. Kumar. "See this?" She told a worried 60-year-old getting an IV, pointing to her own arm where the IV had been. "It's like a tiny straw helping your body drink the medicine it needs to feel better." The child's fear melted into curiosity, just as Maya's had. Dr. Kumar watched these interactions from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. He remembered his own mentors, how they had shaped not just his medical knowledge, but his approach to patient care. Now he was watching that same spark ignite in Maya. On her last day of observations before discharge, Dr. Kumar brought her a gift: his old stethoscope from medical school. "It's a bit worn," he said, placing it around her neck, "but it still works perfectly." Maya's eyes welled up with tears as she held it carefully, like it was made of gold. "Promise you'll study hard," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The world needs doctors who understand what it's like to be a patient." He pulled out a business card, writing his personal number on the back. "Call me when you get into medical school." Not if. When. As the sun set on Maya's final day in the hospital, the room was filled with staff saying goodbye. Each person had played a part not just in her recovery, but in nurturing a dream. Maya's mother hugged everyone, words failing to express her gratitude. But sometimes, the most powerful medicine isn't in pills or procedures. It's in the belief that one person places in another. The years after Maya's hospital stay weren't easy, but they were filled with determination. Her mother picked up extra weekend shifts at the diner, tucking away every spare dollar into a college fund. Maya would often do her homework at the corner booth during these shifts, her textbooks spread out next to half-empty coffee cups and her mother's old stethoscope always nearby. "Baby, you need to rest sometimes," her mother would say, watching Maya solve chemistry problems late into the night. But they both knew that dreams like these required sacrifice. The regular customers at the diner learned about Maya's goals, and soon a small community formed around their table. Mr. Thompson, a retired high school science teacher who came in for breakfast every morning, started bringing his old AP biology materials. "These might help," he'd say, sliding them across the table while Maya poured his coffee. The diner's owner would sneak extra food onto their plates, saying, "Growing minds need good nutrition." During her junior year of high school, Maya started volunteering at the same hospital where Dr. Kumar had saved her life. The elderly patients in the long-term care ward particularly loved her gentle manner and bright smile. She'd often read to them during her breaks, practicing the medical terms she was learning. "You remind me of my doctor from years ago," one patient told her. He took the time to explain everything too. Maya smiled, touching the worn business card she still kept in her pocket. She hadn't called Dr. Kumar yet. She wanted to wait until she had something significant to report. Her mother noticed how Maya would save the local newspaper's medical articles, creating her own study guides. Their small apartment's walls gradually filled with anatomical charts and sticky notes covered in chemical formulas. The bathroom mirror had vocabulary words written in dry erase marker, which Maya would review while brushing her teeth. The breakthrough came during Maya's senior year. Her science project on infectious diseases won not just the school fair, but the state competition. The local newspaper ran a small story about her, mentioning her own battle with pneumonia years ago. When the article appeared, the diner's regular customers clipped it out proudly, as if she were their own daughter. "Your application essay writes itself," her guidance counselor said, helping her navigate college applications. But Maya struggled with the words, wanting to convey not just her experience, but the ripple effect of kindness she'd witnessed in that hospital room years ago. Late one night, after a particularly long shift, Maya's mother found her daughter crying over college brochures. "The costs, Mom," Maya whispered. "Even with scholarships." Her mother sat down, pulling out a worn envelope. Inside was years of saved tips, birthday money from customers, and small contributions from their diner family. "We're not alone in this," her mother said softly. "Remember how the hospital staff came together for you? Our community here has been doing the same thing, $1 at a time." The envelope wouldn't cover everything, but it represented hundreds of small acts of faith in her dream. Maya's acceptance letter to the State University's pre-med program arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Her mother was working when Maya opened it, hands shaking. She ran 6 blocks in the rain to the diner, bursting through the door with happy tears mixing with raindrops on her face. The entire diner erupted in cheers. Regular customers hugged her, the cook rang the order bell repeatedly, and someone started passing around free pie. In the midst of the celebration, Maya's mother held her tight, whispering, "You did it, baby. You really did it." That night, Maya finally took out Dr. Kumar's old business card. The edges were worn soft, the ink slightly faded, but the number was still clear. Her hands trembled as she dialed, unsure if the number would still work after all these years. The line rang once, twice. Then a familiar voice answered. Maya took a deep breath and said, "Dr. Kumar, this is Maya, the girl with pneumonia from 5 years ago. I got into pre-med." The pause on the other end felt eternal, until she heard what sounded like a muffled sob of joy. Sometimes the hardest part of a journey isn't the destination. It's believing you can make it there at all. But Maya had learned that dreams don't grow in isolation. They're nurtured by communities, watered with kindness, and fed by the faith others place in you, one small gesture at a time. The university campus felt enormous on Maya's first day. Clutching her worn backpack and Dr. Kumar's old stethoscope, she found her way to the introductory biology lecture. The classroom was packed with hundreds of pre-med hopefuls, all sharing the same dream but not the same story. Your grades will determine your future, the professor announced, pacing in front of the whiteboard. Look to your left, look to your right. Only one of you will make it to medical school. While other students shifted nervously, Maya straightened her shoulders. She'd fought harder battles than this. Between classes, she worked in the university coffee shop, often studying during slow periods. Regular customers learned her schedule, leaving extra tips with notes saying "future doctor" on them. Her co-workers would quiz her using flashcards during breaks, even though they didn't understand half the medical terms. "How do you memorize all this?" her roommate asked one night, watching Maya create detailed study guides. Maya smiled, remembering how Dr. Kumar had taught her to break down complex ideas into simple stories. She started study groups, teaching others the same way, making difficult concepts accessible through real-life examples. Her mother still worked at the diner, now proudly wearing a "My Daughters in Pre-Med" button that a customer had made for her. Every Sunday, they'd video chat, Maya showing off her latest lab reports while her mother shared updates about their diner family. Mr. Thompson, the retired science teacher, still asked about her progress every morning. The hardest times came during finals week of her first semester. Maya caught a mild cold, and the sound of her own coughing brought back memories of that hospital room years ago. She pulled out Dr. Kumar's business card, now laminated to preserve it, and remembered his words. "The world needs doctors who understand what it's like to be a patient." Her grades that semester surprised even her, straight A's. The same professor who had given the intimidating first-day speech called her aside after the final exam. "Your essays show something beyond book knowledge," he said. "You write about medicine like someone who's lived it." During her sophomore year, Maya started volunteering at the university hospital. She was assigned the pediatric ward, where she found herself telling simplified versions of her own story to scared young patients. "See this stethoscope," she'd say, showing them Dr. Kumar's old one. "It helped save my life once, and now I'm learning to help others with it." The pre-med journey took its toll. Some nights, Maya would fall asleep on her textbooks, waking up with paper creases on her cheek. Other times, she'd doubt herself, wondering if she was trying to achieve the impossible. During these moments, she'd remember the hospital staff who had believed in her before she could believe in herself. Her organic chemistry professor became another mentor, recognizing in Maya the same fire he'd seen in other first-generation college students. He offered her a research assistant position, which meant fewer hours at the coffee shop but more experience in the lab. Sometimes, he told her, the best investment you can make is in yourself. The university's pre-med advisor was initially skeptical of Maya's chances at top medical schools, pointing out her lack of family connections and financial resources. But Maya simply pulled out her mother's latest video, showing the diner's wall, now covered with her academic achievements, surrounded by encouraging notes from customers. "I may not have a legacy," Maya said firmly, "but I have a community." The advisor, moved by her determination, began connecting her with scholarship opportunities and medical school recruiters who valued diverse life experiences. One evening, while studying in the library, Maya received a text from her mother. The diner customers had organized a surprise. They were starting a small scholarship fund for future pre-med students from their neighborhood. They'd named it after Maya, hoping her story would inspire others. Through tears, Maya opened her laptop and began writing thank you notes to everyone who had supported her journey. At the top of the list was Dr. Kumar's name. She hadn't seen him since starting university, wanting to prove herself first. But with each passing semester, each perfect grade, each small victory, she was getting closer to becoming the doctor he had inspired her to be. As she wrote, other pre-med students stopped by her usual study spot, asking for help with their assignments. Maya looked up from her notes, seeing in their anxious faces the same fears she'd overcome. Without hesitation, she pulled up a chair for them, just as others had done for her. Sometimes the best way to honor those who helped you is to become someone who helps others. The medical school acceptance letters arrived during Maya's final semester of college. She sat in her old spot at the diner, surrounded by the same people who had watched her grow up, as she opened each envelope with trembling hands. 5 acceptances, including one from a top-ranked program that offered a full scholarship. "Read it again," called out the cook from the kitchen, his spatula raised in celebration. Maya's mother stood behind her, hands clasped over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The regular customers crowded around their booth, just as invested in this moment as they had been in every step of her journey. "With great pleasure, we offer you admission." Maya's voice cracked as she read. The diner erupted in cheers for the second time in 4 years. Mr. Thompson, now walking with a cane but still faithful to his morning coffee routine, raised his cup in a toast. "I told you all," he said proudly, "she's going to change lives." That evening, after the celebration died down, Maya sat alone in her childhood bedroom. The walls were still covered with those old anatomy charts, now joined by her college graduation photos and Dean's List certificates. She pulled out her phone and Dr. Kumar's worn business card. Their occasional calls over the years had been brief but meaningful. He'd offered advice about classes, encouraged her during tough times, and always ended with, "I'm proud of you." But this call was different. This time, she had fulfilled the promise she'd made in that hospital room. "Dr. Kumar?" she said when he answered. "I got in. Full scholarship." The silence on the other end lasted only a moment before she heard him clear his throat. "I never doubted you would," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Where will you be studying?" Maya took a deep breath. "Boston Medical School," she said. "I'm coming back home." She heard him catch his breath. It was the same hospital where he had saved her life, where her dream had first taken root. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparations. The diner community organized a farewell party, complete with a cake decorated with a stethoscope design. Each regular customer brought a small gift: a medical dictionary, a warm coat for Boston winters, gift cards for groceries. Maya's mother watched it all with proud tears, remembering how these same people had helped them through the hardest times. On moving day, as Maya packed Dr. Kumar's old stethoscope carefully in her bag, she found a stack of cards from former patients at the university hospital where she'd volunteered. One stood out: a crayon drawing from a young girl showing 2 figures, me and my future doctor. It was exactly the kind of drawing Maya herself might have made years ago. The drive to Boston felt symbolic. Her mother insisted on taking her, just as she had driven her to school every day despite working double shifts. They talked about everything and nothing, both aware that this journey had started long ago in a hospital room when Maya had been fighting for her life. "Remember when you used to practice taking my blood pressure with that toy medical kit?" her mother asked, smiling at the memory. Maya laughed, touching the real stethoscope in her bag. "Now you'll be doing it for real," her mother added softly. As they approached Boston, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Kumar. "Welcome home, future colleague. Dinner at my house this weekend. My wife insists. We have a lot to catch up on." The medical school campus loomed ahead, its buildings both intimidating and inviting. Maya thought about all the different paths that had led her here: the illness that could have ended her dream before it began, the doctor who saw beyond her symptoms to her potential, the community that refused to let her give up. Standing at the entrance to her dormitory, Maya hugged her mother goodbye. "You did it, baby," her mother whispered. "You really did it." But Maya shook her head. "We did it, Mom. All of us." She looked up at the hospital building visible in the distance, or somewhere Dr. Kumar was probably making his rounds, maybe inspiring another young patient to dream big. As she unpacked her room that evening, Maya placed Dr. Kumar's stethoscope carefully on her desk. Soon it would hear new heartbeats, help diagnose new patients, become part of new stories. But more than just a medical instrument, it was a reminder that sometimes the best medicine isn't what's prescribed. It's the belief that one person places in another's dreams. The first semester of medical school felt different from anything Maya had experienced before. Gone were the uncertainty and self-doubt of her undergraduate years. Here, in these halls where Dr. Kumar had once saved her life, she moved with quiet confidence. Her classmates noticed something different about her. The way she approached patients wasn't just from textbook knowledge. "How you stay so calm during clinical rotations?" a classmate asked one day after watching Maya comfort a frightened child. She touched the stethoscope around her neck, still Dr. Kumar's old one, and smiled. "Because I've been on the other side of this stethoscope," she replied softly. The dinner at Dr. Kumar's house became a monthly tradition. His wife, a warm woman who insisted Maya call her auntie, always cooked too much food and sent her home with leftovers. "Medical students need proper nutrition," she'd say, packing containers just like the diner owner used to do years ago. During these dinners, Dr. Kumar shared stories from his own medical school days, but more importantly, he listened to Maya's experiences. "You're seeing medicine from both sides now," he observed one evening. "That's a gift few doctors have." His words stayed with her during difficult rotations. Maya's approach to patient care caught the attention of her professors. While other students focused solely on symptoms and treatments, she noticed the worried mother in the corner who hadn't slept, the child clutching a beloved toy, the elderly patient trying to hide their fear. Small details that made big differences in treatment. One particularly challenging night in the emergency room brought everything full circle. A young girl was brought in with severe pneumonia, her single father frantic with worry. Maya recognized the fear in his eyes. She'd seen it in her own mother's face years ago. As the attending physician began the examination, Maya gently explained each step to the father, just as Dr. Kumar had done for her family. Later that night, she found herself in the same room where she had once been a patient. Standing there in her white coat, stethoscope around her neck, she felt the weight of how far she'd come. A nurse found her there, lost in thought. "That was good work tonight," the nurse said. "The way you handled the father's concerns, we don't see that often in medical students." Maya smiled, remembering Rita, the nurse who had helped her family all those years ago. "I had good teachers," she replied. Her mother visited whenever she could, bringing care packages from the diner crowd. The regulars still asked about her daily, and her mother would proudly share updates about Maya's progress in medical school. The "My Daughter's in Pre-Med" button had been replaced with one that read, "My daughter's becoming a doctor." One afternoon, while reviewing patient charts, Maya overheard two young residents discussing a complex case. Their frustration was evident as they debated treatment options. She remembered Dr. Kumar's words from years ago about breaking down complex problems into simple stories. Without thinking, she stepped in and offered a different perspective, explaining the case in a way that made both residents stop and reconsider their approach. "Where did you learn to think like that?" one of them asked. Maya thought about all her teachers, not just the professors, but the patients who shared their stories, the nurses who showed her compassion in action, the doctors who demonstrated that medicine was as much about listening as treating. That evening, during their monthly dinner, Dr. Kumar noticed Maya was quieter than usual. "Something on your mind?" he asked as they sat in his study, surrounded by medical journals and family photos. She nodded, gathering her thoughts. "Today, I realized I'm becoming the kind of doctor I needed when I was sick," she said slowly. "And it's because of you, not just for saving my life, but for showing me what a doctor can be." Dr. Kumar's eyes glistened as he reached for an old photo album. "Look at this," he said, opening to a page from years ago. There was Maya, unconscious in her hospital bed, clutching that anatomy book. Next to it was a recent photo of her in her white coat, teaching a young patient about the stethoscope. Sometimes, he said softly, we save lives in more ways than one. The city lights twinkled outside his study window, and somewhere in the hospital nearby, other doctors were saving lives, other patients were fighting battles, other dreams were taking shape. Maya touched the stethoscope around her neck, feeling the smooth metal that had listened to so many heartbeats, held so many hopes. She was no longer just the patient who survived. She was becoming the doctor who understood. 15 years had passed since that stormy night when Dr. Kumar saved Maya's life. Now, standing in her own office at Boston General Hospital, Maya adjusted the nameplate on her desk. Dr. Maya Williams, pediatric specialist. Her old anatomy book sat on the shelf, alongside her medical degrees and certificates. The morning sunlight streamed through her office window, catching the silver threads in Dr. Kumar's hair as he stood in the doorway. Ready for the transition? He asked with a warm smile. After 30 years of service, he had chosen Maya to take over his practice. Today was their first official day working together as equal colleagues. I remember when this office seemed enormous, Maya said, touching the worn stethoscope that still hung around her neck. Back when you let me sit here and pretend to be a doctor during my recovery. Dr. Kumar chuckled. I wasn't letting you pretend. I was watching you become. Their first patient of the day was a young boy with asthma, clutching his mother's hand tightly. Maya noticed the worry in the mother's eyes, the same worry her own mother had carried years ago. As she began the examination, she pulled out a simple drawing pad, a trick she'd learned from her years of practice. Let me show you what's happening in your lungs, she said, sketching a quick diagram. The boy's fear turned to curiosity as she explained everything in terms he could understand. Dr. Kumar watched from the corner, seeing his own teaching methods reflected in her approach. During their lunch break, Maya's mother arrived with food from the diner, now her own diner, bought with years of saved tips and help from loyal customers. The Tuesday regulars still ask about their favorite doctor, she said proudly, setting out containers of homemade soup. The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Rita, the retired nurse who had helped care for Maya during her illness. She now volunteered at the hospital's patient support program, which Maya had helped establish. The program paired current patients with former ones who could offer understanding and encouragement. Remember when you could barely reach the water fountain? Rita teased, hugging Maya tightly. Now look at you, teaching the next generation of doctors. She was referring to the medical students who often followed Maya on rounds, drawn to her unique way of connecting with patients. A difficult case came in later that day. A teenage girl with pneumonia, her single father looking lost and afraid. Maya felt Dr. Kumar's eyes on her as she handled the case. She used all the knowledge she'd gained, both medical and personal, to treat not just the illness, but the fear that came with it. You started using my old lines, Dr. Kumar observed afterward, his eyes twinkling. Maya smiled. They worked on me, didn't they? They shared a quiet moment, both remembering that first night when he had refused to give up on a very sick little girl. As evening approached, Maya's mother returned with Mr. Thompson, now in his 80s but still sharp as ever. He had brought his great-granddaughter, who shyly presented Maya with a drawing, a child's version of her treating patients. It was remarkably similar to the one Maya had drawn for Dr. Kumar all those years ago. The day ended with a small gathering in Maya's office. Dr. Kumar raised a cup of coffee, the same brand the diner still served, and spoke softly. When I saved your life, he said, looking at Maya, I saved one person. But through you, that act has multiplied. Every patient you treat, every student you teach, every life you touch, they're all part of that night's legacy. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her. Her mother, who had worked countless extra shifts, Dr. Kumar, who had believed in her from the start, Rita, who had shown her the importance of compassionate care, Mr. Thompson, who had nurtured her early dreams, and all the others who had played a part in her journey. Medicine isn't just about curing illnesses, she said, touching the old stethoscope. It's about healing people. And sometimes, the best healing comes from showing someone they can turn their worst experience into their greatest purpose. As the sun set over Boston General Hospital, Maya stood at her office window. Somewhere in the building, other doctors were saving lives, other patients were fighting battles, other dreams were taking shape. But here, in this moment, the circle was complete. The little girl who had once fought for her life had become the doctor who fought for others, carrying forward a legacy of healing, hope, and the profound power of believing in someone's dreams. The stethoscope around her neck, Dr. Kumar's old one, had listened to thousands of heartbeats over the years. But perhaps the most important thing it had ever heard was the sound of one person's dream coming true, beating strong and steady, ready to help others find their own healing rhythm.